Was I kicked off the commission? That's fine. You know, it's not the first thing I've been fired from. It doesn't matter to me. I just want to know what you want me to say. I'm Andy Horowitz. Yeah. I've seen you hovering. I'm sorry, that was a rude. It was the screen that hovers. You are like. Thank you for everything. It makes sense. You're one of those people that like everything is happening. The big sense. That's the big sense I have. Okay, well, you know what? I'll just try to work my name into conversation, you know? No, don't worry about it. Just, I'll just work. Sure. Sounds good. Treasure it always. Thank you.
I'll take a look.
Okay. I'm sorry, I did not do very well by yours this time.
It's fine. I found some notes that I have, so we don't have minutes. I just know that there's like a quick turnaround for FOIA of the minutes.
Okay.
I think Cindy sent an email last week, so. Do you need notes to write minutes? What do you need?
Okay. I just want to be able to give you what you need to report, and then
I'm sure I can wing it, so don't worry about that.
there was discussion of like, well, actually step one.
Yeah, and Andy and I actually did a little work after the meeting and just like, you know, so I can work from my notes. I just didn't know if I had missed them. I didn't see them up on the website yet.
They're not.
A deal. You know what? No one's gonna die.
Okay, but I did send you a reply to your email.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, great. Well, you know what? I think that you focus on putting together some minutes, and if you need stuff from me, let me know. Okay? Yeah. Maybe Cindy has something too. She was there.
Hey Jason, this is Paul from the Democracy Center. If you're able to, you can just unmute yourself and give us a test. So make sure
Hi, Paul. Hey, Jason, can you hear me?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it.
Give me a little test too.
but yet you voted for it.
We're gonna start playing the
Your own contradiction.
I didn't say famous for what.
Communications,
It's a hybrid model.
right?
Camera setups.
I totally forgot my computer. It's sitting on my desk at home. I have everything that I need for it.
I think you're right.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, great.
You look good.
I printed the
Sheet of paper.
yeah, I printed our like action plan, so I have that. I think that's on my computer. So
Yes. Car trouble. Now I'm on the spot.
I think that'll be fine.
We have some.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I'll see if I can get some air.
I am going to call the meeting of the Commission, the America 250 Connecticut Commission. This is our fourth, I believe, and thank you all for being here. Hope you're enjoying the summer. I certainly am. It was hard to drag myself out today. I live out in beautiful Stores, and but here we are in the wonderful Old State House, who are again hosting us. Thank you to Sally Whipple, the director, and I don't know if there's any announcements we need to make, but thank you so much, Sally, for letting us be in this wonderful historic building. Very appropriate place for this commission. So anything we need to know housekeeping-wise?
I don't think so.
Okay. Just for everyone's information, we are both live and online. A number of the commission meeting members are joining us online. So, and Jason Mancini, my vice chair, is having car trouble, so he will be joining us online. That means I have to run everything, so I hope I know what I'm doing. We have a wonderful staff from the Humanities Council who's been keeping us on track now for almost a year. And they're doing a wonderful job. So I'd like to just start the meeting. I always like to reflect on why we're here. So just to read from the executive order that was formed by the governor that formed this commission. Connecticut is embarking on a multi-year commemoration, celebration, and reflection on the 250th anniversary of the American War for Independence, beginning with the signing of the Declaration on July 4th, 1776, in recognition of the moment which unleashed historic, social, legal, cultural, and political forces that caused the ideas and ideals of America to reverberate around the world. This commission has been formed. So that's a very highfalutin way of saying we are going to pay attention to our history. And we have spent the past year on this commission basically raising awareness, I would say, among the public that this is happening and trying to come up with themes. We've come up with 4 themes for our work, which I think will be the underpinning of many of the events that go around around the celebration. And a lot of the materials can be seen online, and there is a website just for the public's information because this is being recorded, just so everyone's aware. The website is ct250.org. And there you will see we have draft action plans, all the documents we've been forming over the last year. And we have subcommittees. Some of the chairs of those subcommittees are here today, and so we'll hear some reports about what the subcommittees are doing because the subcommittees are also forming their own action plans. And even though it's 2023 and the actual event was not until 1776, so 2026, we are not exactly early to this. This takes a lot of planning. So I think we're reaching the end of our first phase with this meeting, and now I think we will spring into action, so to speak, and start beginning to implement the things we've been discussing now for the last year. And just to reflect on that a little bit, one of the things we've been discussing is what does this celebration or commemoration look like? What are the important ideas that we're going to come away with? And how is that going to be accomplished? One of the things we have said over and over again is we hope this is a locally driven event. Our commission is charged with paying attention to Connecticut's role specifically in the Great Revolution, but also to look at what was going on in society at the time. I don't see this as just a commemoration of battlefields and sites, frankly. I think it is a wonderful opportunity for the people of Connecticut to visit the sites and to amp up our tourism in the area of historic significance, because there's a lot of it around here. But it's also a time that we can bring in some new ideas, new stories, new curriculum in education, new ways of visiting those sites and those ideas. And that's really what I'd like to see us be about. And we're hoping it will come up, bubble up from the bottom. So one of the things we are talking about and one of the subcommittees is working on is putting together a network of people throughout the state, hopefully at least one person in each town who can be our contact point and start to come up with ideas about their reflections on local activities and things they can do around this commemoration. So those are some of the things we'll work on today, and with that, I think we'll start with, we'll go down the agenda. The first item, of course, is approval of minutes from April 19th, which was our last meeting. Do we have any discussion? First of all, do I have a motion to approve? Thank you. Second. All right. Any discussion? Any additions? Yes, Steve.
No, second.
Oh, second. Okay. All right. All right. Without further discussion, all those in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody? Aye. Hello. Great. All right. With no nays, fine. The minutes are approved from April 19th. And again, the minutes of these meetings are all published on our website for the public. All right. Now, we have been active during this last quarter with the National Commission. There is a National America 250 Commission, and we are charged with liaising with them because they are actively pursuing a number of events and activities. And so I will turn to our staff because some of the staff have been involved in both the national meetings, and also there have been some regional events. There was an event at Fort Ticonderoga, for example. New York State is focusing on that event, and they convened a meeting there. The state of Virginia convened a meeting very reminiscent of the Convention of States that was held back in the 1700s. They are taking quite a lead in this effort, and some of the staff attended that meeting. So maybe I'll turn to Cindy Tolosa. She is the staff person who is directing this effort at the Grand Council. And,
Denise, if you can all hear me, I can at least give a little orientation to the America 250 Foundation update, and then Cindy can take it from there. If that
great,
works.
Perfect. I didn't know you were tuned in. Thank you, Jason.
Yep, I am right here. So we have been exploring this partnership with the 250th Foundation. We had brought to the commission some broader concerns about the overall commission organization, some of the leadership, fiscal, and management concerns that have been going on over the course of the last year or so. We had agreed as a commission to table this conversation until this meeting. Once we learned a little bit more from Rosie Rios, who's the current chair of the commission, where she would be sharing a little bit more information about the direction and content of America's Invitation, as it's called. So, as you mentioned, Denise, we have been maintaining contact with the representatives from the National Commission. We have examined the contract that they have in front of us. We've gone over this contract with representatives from DECD. We've shared some of our concerns. We still, while there was a lot of flexibility from the National Commission around this contract, what we learned in the last couple of weeks with America's Invitation as it unfolded is it's at the moment really a communications campaign. It hasn't, is to our sense, provided the kind of leadership and vision and direction for the commission we were hoping for. So we would recommend, and I think this is up for discussion, we would recommend maintaining a liaison relationship with the National Commission, but not signing on a contract that would commit us in any way to the National Commission. Where we see the actual leadership coming from is from the American Association of State and Local History, who've provided tremendous guidance nationally to small organizations and to the commissions. They've been involved in the Common Cause for All, which is the Williamsburg meeting that we went to back in March. That's the other organization that seems to really have a sense of leading in terms of our nation's ideals, ideas, how to really think about the past and the future, and really doing the work to get us all there. So that's more or less where we're at. We maintain a relationship, but would recommend sort of keeping the status quo. That would also signal we would not accept the $10,000 that comes along with that, as well as rethinking or reimagining the logo, the 250th logo we're using. So I can turn it over to Cindy to add anything, but I think that covers many of the bases that we were hoping to address with you today.
Okay, thank you, Jason. So that was a good explanation of where we are. Our recommendation, as Jason said, is not to go forward with a contract with the National Commission at this time. And the two issues involved with that would be developing our own logo as opposed to using their logo, which has some legal significance, and also just not accepting the $10,000 that was offered. We felt it was just, you know, the relationship that wouldn't warrant all the, for one thing, paperwork we'd have to do for $10,000, and you know. So that's our recommendation, but we're open to suggestion if people feel differently. Yes, go ahead, Steve.
Just a question. Is there, and I'm guessing not, but is there any negative other than those two items to not signing a contract?
No, I don't think there is a negative. In fact, I think it's probably more positive. I always want to have everybody on the same page. I mean, so my initial reaction was personally that it would be better to stay all together. But there's a lot of question of what advantage it would be to us, actually. There's not really anything to be gained from it. It does give us our own separate identity, which in some ways I've come to think is probably a good thing, because part of our charge is to focus on Connecticut. And so that just does give us more flexibility to do that. Yes, Rob.
Steve, just to add to that, I'm aware that Virginia signed the agreement and became a bit frustrated and sent the $10,000 back.
Right.
And so there's, I think, some consistency with other states not feeling like the offer from the National Commission was enough to warrant all the paperwork and the commitments that come along with it. So I think we would be in step with a lot of the other states.
Anybody else? So I don't think we really need to vote on it, but I'm getting the sense that people feel it's the right decision to not go forward with a contract with the National Commission at this time. I mean, things could change over time. But it does mean we will have to develop our own set of materials and logos. And as I understand it, DECD has someone who can work with us on that. Is that right? Someone here from DECD?
Rob can fill in a little bit, but we spoke with Anthony the last week of June, who is the new director of marketing for the state, who is going to work with us.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So we'll be working with that over time. So is that satisfactory to everyone? Okay, good.
Denise, just one more point to add.
Yeah.
I know that there was a meeting in upstate New York, but the Virginia Commission is hosting another event as they did next March. And they're planning to do it consecutive years in an effort to build momentum. Jason and I and Scott Wands attended, and I think this group would be interested in participating if they could. There were 300 people that participated, 34 states were represented, and it was a great way to interact with a number of different state delegations, but it was also, I think, a good example of how Virginia was really rolling out the red carpet for us, and the kind of program that they provided, I think, had a lot of depth and quality, as well as really pulling the nation together in a way that I thought was significant.
All right, that's interesting. So we'll pass along information to everyone in case, do you know when it is, the date? No.
Not mid-March, but I'll make sure Cindy's got the dates.
I have them. I'll send them out.
Okay. Great, yeah. I have heard good things. I did not attend myself, but I would love to go next time and see what the other states are doing. By the way, people do ask us, where are we in terms of other states, in terms of our actions? I would say we're kind of somewhere in the middle. Not every state has a commission yet. I think, do you know how many?
36.
36 states do have state level commissions. I think all the original 13 colonies probably. No? Oh,
I don't think Maine, maybe? Or is it New?
Not sure. Do you know, Jason?
New Hampshire.
I think it's New Hampshire. Maine was part of Massachusetts at the time,
Yeah,
if I recall.
There we go. It was one of the two.
Yeah. So I would say, we're on track. Let's put it that way. Some states, of course, like Pennsylvania and Virginia, have been working on this for several years now. But we're going to catch up. So, all right.
It would be great if there were support to help commission members and other interested people get to that event at Williamsburg.
Of course.
Just a note.
Well, I can talk a little later about what we're considering. I'm in the process of developing a council that will help us with fundraising for things.
I'm sure
like
that's
that.
in the cards.
Yes.
Just wanted
We've
to
already
note
had-
that.
Yes. No, of course. That would be something we would really consider trying to get commission members to these meetings. It would be great. Okay, the New England Regional Gathering. Cindy, you want to report on that?
Yeah, and Amherst, feel free to chime in.
Oh, Amherst was there too, yeah. This was the event at Fort Ticonderoga, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
In mid-June, it was New England plus New York. And what I will say, one of the striking things was that both New York and Vermont had a very large tourism contingency there, who were very involved in the meeting and learning more about what's going on. So I thought that was something interesting. And otherwise, we are very much in line with where most of the other states are. There were some good ideas shared there. There is a state that has a framework for getting partner organizations that I plan to kind of look at and share with everybody to see if we want to do something similar moving forward. And the approvals process that I shared is a amended version of Vermont's process that they shared at that meeting. So there's a lot of really great work being done and shared among these different states. And I would say overall, we probably have a stronger thematic approach than some of the other states, but some of the other states are definitely much further ahead in terms of tourism and thinking about the 250th in that way.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this is not like a prepared presentation. I've just been looking over my notes from that day. I think I was very interested in the infrastructure that they have in New York State around, there's like an association of public historians that gives them great outreach at the local level across the state. I also took note of some of the outreach work that Vermont was doing, both the criteria. They had ideas about sending a resolution to all towns and municipalities. There are 252 in Vermont, to have them do this sort of civic participation thing. It was an idea that we had sort of floated, and doing teacher listening sessions to find out what teachers need. So I think there are a lot of ideas that I wrote down a bunch from Vermont also. I think that in terms of, there wasn't, I don't get the sense that this Ticonderoga meeting was as strong in terms of like, we're presenting a bunch of content that like at the Williamsburg meeting, but it was a nice opportunity to make some connections with folks in other states. I know that there were some breakout groups in the afternoon, and you went to the like social media and outreach one, and I went to the education one. Natalie Bellinger from Connecticut Museum of Culture and History was also present. I will note, so we had 3 folks from Connecticut there, but it was striking, and Cindy and I were talking about this, is the strong presence from I Love New York, and then the Vermont tourism and the absence of anything from Connecticut. So I think there's a lot that we could do potentially in connecting our tourism folks with what those states are doing, and thinking about this strategically as an opportunity to get people coming to Connecticut. And if there's opportunities for regional collaboration, that might be one way to sort of help Connecticut raise the bar on the tourism side. One of the things that we talked about in the education breakout was ways to use History Day, because this was another thing that some of the other states were thinking about as a means of sort of spreading the word and doing sort of educational engagement. And I have some other ideas there, but I can share those with Steve's committee.
Great. Okay, thanks. All right. So if we have any questions about that, it's a great way to get good ideas and good juices flowing. So hopefully that would be a wonderful thing to have a joint meeting with Vermont, get the tourism people together with the Vermont folks, because it sounds like they're doing some good work.
Yeah.
In many ways, it was also just a way for Ticonderoga to showcase what they are doing and what they have. There were like behind the scenes collections tours and other things like that, and that made it a really fun day, at least for me, in a beautiful place. So.
Did they provide contact information for the tourism people? There's like a big email that Jonas Spivak from Bennington was sort of sending around to everybody. So I'm sure we have email addresses for everyone, and with some, we can figure out who they are.
Yeah.
Yes, the marketing subcommittee, that would be a good meeting, we could get in with the Vermont folks.
I can find the contact in New York as well.
That'd be great.
New York had 2, I think, from I Love New York. They were on the collections tour in the morning.
At least 4 or 5.
Oh, 4? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I Love New York is big.
Okay, so that's what's going on. That's the national, regional. Now let's talk a little bit about local outreach, what we're doing, updating. And let me say, we're still at the very beginning of our outreach, because this meeting is where we're going to get feedback from, setting up networks of folks, being able to really reach out in various ways across the state. But there were a few things that went on. One of them was...
Move on, Denise, I'm sorry. I saw that America's Invitation was on the agenda, and I don't know if we want to talk about that a little bit more, if folks on the commission are aware of what this is.
Oh, you mean the 4th of July thing they were...
Well, the like kind of crowdsourcing. I just noticed it was on the agenda. I know it's been mentioned, but is there more that we want to say about that? Because Rosie Rios gave a little virtual presentation at Ticonderoga on that. I just don't want it to get lost in the shuffle in case we want to discuss it. But if not, we can move on.
Jason?
I hit that as a quick highlight.
Okay.
If you address that specifically, I didn't dive deep into it other than talk about that it's a communications plan more than. But if there's anything that needs to be added or discussed,
Well, we should probably explain what it is. And I was part of that phone call. They were unveiling a program that they were asking the states to participate in. Our sense at the time, it was a week before July 4th, and it was a little short notice. So that's what we're talking about here, our 4th of July outreach, because they came up with a very interesting program, and the idea is they're inviting everyone in the country to tell stories and send stories in online about whether it's their families or their towns or their localities. Amrish, you can probably explain it better. I don't have it in front of me, but it's something that I think maybe we should look at. I thought it sounded like a very interesting idea. It was just very last minute, and our sense was we couldn't really do much with it this year, but probably in the future we could go ahead. You want to talk more about it?
Yeah, I mean, so as I understand it, it's just sort of an attempt to raise awareness about America 250 and, diversify the kinds of stories that we're sharing. I think that my impression, just as someone from the history space, is that I asked some questions about what they were doing with all of these materials they were gathering, if they had a plan for stewarding them somewhere. It was basically a massive digital collections project, a snapshot in time. I think of the resources that have been created with the Bicentennial, the EPA's Documerica project in the 1970s. These are incredible historical documents of a moment in time, and this is a potential to create a snapshot of a moment in time. But I do not feel that the National Commission has a plan and ideas about how they're going to steward these materials, or that they're even thinking about them as a historical collection at this moment in time. So I think that's my take on it. I don't know if you want to say anything more. I think it would be really great if there are ways that we can sort of recapture some of the Connecticut stories and share them back out. But it's kind of unclear what the infrastructure looks like, and I'm not sure that the commission, the chairwoman of the commission, is in a position to really know all of the details of that. So
at this point, they really don't have a plan for that.
Okay.
I've reached out directly to a couple of the different staff members on the commission, and they said that they heard everybody, but that they really haven't solved what they're going to be doing with the information collected.
But that being said, go ahead.
I'm sorry, maybe putting Mike on the spot, but
Yeah.
we've had some internal conversations with the Connecticut Digital Archive and piloting some projects around the 250th. I don't know if he's there and able to touch on that.
You have to come up. No one will hear you.
Sorry,
Yeah,
put you in the hot seat.
that's okay. I was going to talk a little bit later too
We
about.
should introduce.
Oh, sorry. Mike Kamisis, Manager of Partnerships and Projects at Connecticut Humanities, working a lot in digital collections and a lot with our partner organizations. I've heard about this project and kind of they haven't put the thought into it that we have for some of the things we're working on to make resources available. We'll talk about those later with Cindy. We have talked to the CTDA, Connecticut Digital Archive based at the University of Connecticut, about doing more community histories and building the infrastructure there. We've partnered with them officially to do that, to work with local libraries, to build a pilot program that hopefully will be running so we can do some of these things to capture those Connecticut stories from communities, from individuals, by the time we're ready in 25, 26.
Great. Okay, thanks so much. Yeah, good to know.
I guess my larger question for the commission, we don't have to answer this today, but do we have a plan for the extent to which we're going to promote and engage with the America's Invitation Project? And what use will it be to us here in Connecticut? So we don't have to answer this now.
Like I say,
I have a lot of questions about it.
Yeah, it was quite last minute. I feel like we are still in a stage of building awareness of the entire event. So, but I do think it's an interesting idea, and I'd love to follow up on it. And our charge is Connecticut, so it makes sense that we would do the Connecticut stories. And I would remind everyone that is actually our first theme is tell inclusive stories. So it fits right with what we're trying to accomplish. So we'll probably put that on the list of projects we'd like to fund. All right, and in line with that, it did get us thinking about 4th of July. It was right there, and we hadn't really planned anything, so we got busy and developed some materials that we got out to some of the towns that were having parades on 4th of July. And Cindy put together a very nice handout that will be the beginnings of our outreach to build awareness out there. And we sent out, how many copies did we send out to the towns?
We got out about 1,000,
About
mostly
1,000.
to congressional staffers.
We decided to send them to the congressional offices because the Congress people tend to march in these parades, and so they were able to give them out at the parade in key cities and towns. So that was the beginnings of something we're going to do more of. We'll probably be reaching out to all the towns through CCM and COST and organizations like that that can access the town governments to get us going in the direction of having a committee in every town would be our goal. All right, so that's what we did for 4th of July. And we also have, Jason has been involved in some site visits. Jason, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sort of in the spirit of raising awareness across the state around the themes that we've laid forth in this commission, Connecticut Humanities staff began to do some site visits. We visited Fort Trumbull in New London at the end of June to get a sense from that staff where they're at, what they're doing with respect to their exhibits, public presentations, engagement, and so on, but also getting a sense of what their needs are in terms of infrastructure and really imagining what they could be contributing leading up to the 250th. So we took this initial tour and thought a little bit more about the ways that we might be able to engage the public as well as members of the commission and our elected leaders over the course of the summer and the fall. And what we've put together a series of proposed site visits. For those of you who click through the agenda, you'll see, and for the audience, I'll note the site visits we plan to do this summer are to the Amistad Schooner, the Freeman Houses in Bridgeport, Keeler Tavern, the Jonathan Trumbull War Office House in the Lebanon Historical Society, the Mashantucket Pequot Museum, again, Fort Trumbull, its counterpart in Groton, Fort Griswold, Old Newgate Prison, the Old State House, and Webb Dean Stevens. And we really wanted to cover a broad series of topics that represent the different themes. And there are multiple themes here that are represented in each of these locations, but we thought this might get us really thinking and the public thinking about how and why these particular sites matter in the national conversation, but more particularly to Connecticut and our residents. We have a number of other future site visits laid out, but we really invite the commissioners to offer their thoughts on this list. We would love to see you there. We want to engage local representatives, elected leaders in the Senate, in the State House. But this is an initial crack, and we look forward to your feedback.
So if you're interested in participating in these site visits, you would contact Cindy. We'll be putting together a calendar of those site visits, and then you can. We would love to have as many commission members as can come. Would be wonderful. And also, I'll take this moment to talk about some of the things that are going on. Jason and I are going to be visiting the Digging Through History project in Bolton on Friday, which is part of the Rochambeau Trail. That has some national funding to define that trail, and it's an amazing project. They have a group of French children, students coming to dig in Bolton at the, I guess it was a war office of some sort at the time, where Rochambeau was there with Washington and so forth. And so the kids will be literally on a dig, and the American students have visited France to do the same thing in France. So it's a really wonderful exchange program. And that's Friday, if anybody's interested in coming. It's between, I think, 9:30 and noon. They're going to be having having the kids there, and you can participate in the dig. And so it sounds interesting. And of course, I want to mention the fact that the Litchfield Historical Society has been very actively engaging in planning for the Semiquincentennial, and they seem to I think of them as probably the most active historical society that we're aware of in this whole arena, and they're doing very interesting things. So we were speaking this morning about some ideas we have about promoting our themes across the state, but so they're doing some interesting things up there as well. If anyone's interested, I don't know if you want to say anything about any activities that you have going on, or anything the public could come and see or do?
Well, I will tell you one that I think is very exciting. Our town stakeholders have told us that the feedback they're getting from their groups and boards is, oh, it's 3 years away, right? And so the Historical Society is going to be hosting the committee's first kickoff event on September 12th, and it's not too late to start planning research training. So what they're going to do is train people how to use their resources, how to access their resources to research what they need in order to plan events. So
wonderful. Great. So we'll try to put all these things on a calendar on the website. We'll and anything anyone is aware of or want to publicize, we're happy to do so. So that would be great. Okay, anything else on local outreach? We'll get to some of that when we get to the committee reports as well. Okay, we thought it might be useful at this point to have us all go through, have Cindy walk us through the Google Workspace that we're using to communicate, because some of us, I'm still getting used to it. So it would be great if we can start, really using it on an ongoing basis, and just a little refresher course for, at least for me, certainly. I thought it would be helpful to make sure that everyone knows how to log in, how to get to their page, and to get the information we're all talking about here. Great, so go ahead.
So you should all be able to sign in via Google with your first initial last name at ct250.org. If your password is giving you a hard time, let me know. If you have another Google account already, okay, yes, you can. Sorry, let me make sure you can see.
I appreciate this.
Good.
We all do. We all do.
I thought some people would.
There we go. This is a little better. So if you already have a Google account, you can go here to this add another account button, and that will allow you to add your commission account to your existing. It will interact with your existing account. Oh. And if you have two-factor authentication, that'll be an extra little hiccup.
We're in password hell.
Yep. It should be quick and easy. Alrighty. So then once you are, there you go. Oh, I haven't done it linking it to this account. There we go. So once you're in here, you can access the Google Drive. So these little 9 buttons take you to other Google apps. And if you go to Drive, it should be in there as a shared drive, and it's called America 250 CT Commission. Once you get in here, Each subcommittee has a folder with files, and the full commission has a folder. We have information in here for Freedom of Information Act, meetings for subcommittee chairs, and each individual meeting that we have had. And the only folders that haven't been shared are the Advisory Council and Leadership Circle, since those haven't been formed yet. But for example, Governance Committee has a folder for each of their meetings. Agendas and minutes are in here. And I have been saving all of the files that everybody has been sending my way in here so that everybody has access to them. There are drafts of the action plans for each subcommittee. So if at any point you have any questions, let me know. And I can resend as well. I printed out early on a sheet that shared what each of these different apps is for, so I can resend that as well. There is a calendar for commissioners in here. If you go to the calendar, it's this America 250 CT Commission, and we've been putting all full commission and subcommittee meetings into that calendar. And you should also know about the groups feature. Each subcommittee has a group. So there is an email on the website for each subcommittee, so that people from the public can reach out. And when anybody emails the subcommittee email, it gets forwarded to your commission Gmail address. So you'll see, I think at this point we've only gotten one email through there, but you'll see that those, once we get the word out, will be coming through.
Are those going to be coming to everybody, or are they going to the subcommittee chairs?
All commissioners who are on the subcommittee will get it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I can just show you.
We should develop a workflow for addressing those.
Yeah, we should decide who will be responding. But for example, for the engagement subcommittee, all of these folks are in here. And you can set individual settings for whether you want to receive an email every time and things like that. But if you have any questions, you can let me know. I think those are the most relevant areas. There are also chats that you can use.
I have a question.
Yeah.
There are what I consider key documents. For example, for me, the most helpful one is the one that's titled Commission Information Summer of 2023, which is an update of the one from the spring that includes the fourth theme and so forth. And it's basically a 2-page description of the themes of the commission and the vision. Where would we find key documents like that?
So currently I've been arranging them based on what meeting we have shared them in. So if you go into within the Google Drive, if you click on commission, today's meeting, and then it's here under updated commission information. And if it's a document that you want to refer to, you can always star it. And then it will show up over here on the left-hand side in your starred documents.
Okay. Great. Anybody else? Questions? Because this morning when I was trying to find things, I'm trying to get all the documents in one place. And that's, you're doing it, so you're doing it by meeting as opposed to having a master file of some sort of the key documents. But I'm imagining as soon as we get them, I mean, today we have an updated version of this particular document. We'll then put that on the public website.
Yep, exactly.
Right.
Once everybody is on board, we'll get it up there.
Okay. So I think we should, for this document in particular, I think we should actually sign off on it today.
Yeah.
If everybody has seen it. So if you don't have it, we can pull it up, I guess, for you.
It should be printed.
Oh, it's in your, yeah.
It's in your packet.
Okay,
it's the
great.
next document we'll be looking
Yeah,
at.
there are a couple things. There's the commission information, and then there's the event approvals criteria. And I'd like to kind of get those signed off on today so that we can put them up publicly.
Perfect. And before we get to those, I do want to share that I also emailed it out, but just in case you didn't see it, there is a file to share resources. It is this form. And and it was emailed in June at some point, but I can re-email it after this meeting. And we've been collecting resources, and Mike, who will share his screen in just a moment, is working on a database that we'll share with the public so that the public can go in and search for these resources. So he has a prototype to share with everybody here today.
Okay,
Take it away.
let's do it now. Sure.
Cindy, from an organizational standpoint, it seems, I'm assuming that things like the calendar is something that any of us could go into and add something to, but it seems to me, maybe, from an organizational standpoint, if there's something to be added to the calendar, that maybe should be centralized through you.
Ideally, yes,
Okay.
please. You do have access to it, and it is only commissioners who have access to editing privileges, but ideally we'll get it through, and that way I'll make sure the formatting is the same on everything. Yeah.
Okay,
Great.
go ahead, Mike.
Hi, everyone, again. So Cindy shared around the Google form that we're hoping that people can add resources, and we had a discussion what kind of resources we're looking for. Right now, we're looking for historical resources. We kind of started at the Revolutionary period, but we do understand, right, that this is bigger than just that time period, but we needed to scope it down somehow to try to make this work. So the resources go into the spreadsheet, and then we do some work on that spreadsheet to add some more information based on the links that you send us or some other information, which will result in this database. We've had discussions internally, and this is why we're showing this here. This link is live. It is a prototype, so we only have 17 resources. I'd like to thank Khalil Kotap, the digital heritage coordinator who works with me on really kind of building this. So what we thought is we would take your spreadsheet, the spreadsheet that right now has 75 resources in it, a lot of information, really hard to scroll through, and make it a little more user-friendly. So we take it and put it into this site with a bunch of data associated with each resource based on our initial discussions about how would you search for things. And that's why I need feedback from the commission, feedback from the public about how you would go through these documents, what makes sense, and thinking about resources and finding resources, how do people search for them? Again, I'm a librarian, I'm coming from that point of view, and I have a very particular point of view of how people should find things, but I know that's not how everyone does it. So what we've decided to do is kind of call out certain things. Do you want articles, books, lessons plans, web resources? We hooked it up to the 250 themes that the commission has done too. You can search by that. We're working on location right now. This is meant for towns. So if there's a resource about a particular town, you'll be able to find it. We figured out what's the scope here, because we have books that are about the revolution, right? So it's national, we have regional things, we have statewide things. And then the big thing is, where does it come from? What's the content source? We have a couple here. There's things from a library catalog. There's things from Teach It for lesson plans, Connecticut.org. We're also thinking about the audience here. Again, these are just basic data right now. We can add more. And then, again, just subject headings, which we will provide sometimes. I know on the Google form there are some that we've agreed to, but if it's a book, what we're doing is we're going and finding the catalog record and then adding more subjects to it. This is highly curated, which is kind of a good start. We've been sitting on this idea for over a year now, and we're glad that we have some data to do this. And so I'm happy to share this around with Cindy after the meeting so people can take a look. We will be adding more content. And we love feedback. Again, this is not the final product. This is just a prototype site right here. We're trying to figure out how people will look for things in the data behind the scenes before we figure out, okay, what is this going to look like to match our feed?
So will this tie to the CTDA?
No, so this sits on top of the CTDA. We'll pull content from the CTDA,
Okay.
We'll pull content from Connecticut collections, library catalogs, Teach It, YouTube, any kind of web resource. So if you find anything that you find interesting, fill out the form, put as much information as you can, but if not, we'll take the rest from there. This is part of a bigger plan to do this beyond just the 250, to do all of Connecticut's history and all these resources. Yeah, so we've been thinking about this. I know Connecticut Humanities has been thinking about this for about 2.5 years now, and we're finally able to have some data to do it with. So there'll be more added to this, and it will be themed, and the usability part of it will come after that. It's tied to a bigger project we're working with the studio at UConn to do usability. So this all fits perfectly within this. And all you have to do is fill out the form, and we'll take care of the rest.
So if we continue to feed our content to the CTDA, that's what we should be doing.
Yes, so that's the way to do it. Feed it to the CTDA, and this is kind of just, this doesn't have any content in it. It will point to a link that somewhere exists. For example, if we look at a Teach It here about Nathan Hale. Again, this will all be kind of stylized when we pick a theme, but you can see here there's a link out to it down here.
Yeah.
So it takes you to the resource where it lives. So the idea would be at some point to implement an exhibit building part to it that exists on the software we're using. So if you have things about Nathan Hale for Teach It, you have primary sources, you have articles, you have websites, you'll be able to gather those and present those in a way that makes sense. We just need the data to do this.
What are you using on the back end?
Omeka S. This is, again, just a prototype. It doesn't do everything we want, but it gets the job done for now. And this is really going to help us when we go for external funding to build something like this. That was a prototype.
Great. Any questions?
Pretty cool.
Okay, very interesting, and makes me proud of the work we did to come up with the themes, quite frankly, because I can see they are very expandable for many purposes.
It's great, Mike.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. Good work. Okay. Next on the agenda, we're commission approvals process discussion. So I'll turn this over to Cindy.
Yeah, so I hope everybody had a chance to look over these documents briefly before meeting today. So the first document, the commission information, the mission and vision has not changed from what it was originally. So these are all reflected in the report to the governor and our website. The value statement, since our workshop back in March, we've been working on clarifying what those values we have as a commission are. At our last meeting, I shared a list with everybody, and then Andy kindly took it and formed it into this much more coherent, beautiful paragraph. And so I would love to get any feedback on that, any changes we want to make, anything missing that we feel should be reflected before we go public with the value statement.
Any comments, discussion? You see that we did come closed on a title for our fourth theme, which is For the Common Good.
Yeah.
We had a vote on that over time, and it was actually, I had quite a number of interesting discussions with my friends about what the title should be. I brought it to my book club and people like that, and there was a division of opinion, but we did come together around the idea of the common good, particularly at this moment in our history. So I don't know if anybody else has similar experiences, but
And I will say the other highlighted change on this document is the addition of 5 recognized tribes to the Power of Place. That was mentioned during, I believe, the Education Subcommittee meeting. And I think it ties in nicely with everything else that is in there and is an accurate representation of Connecticut as a place.
any further additions before we... I think we should take a vote on approving this document for public perusal on the website. So all those in favor of approving this document as our, what's the name of the commission information? This will be, I think, one of the primary ways we portray, as we go out and try to raise awareness about this. This will be the primary short form version of how we portray our commission.
If we're going to vote on it, can I make 2 tiny changes? I didn't realize we were going to vote,
Sure.
but just two tiny changes.
Yeah.
One is
Yep.
we have welcoming twice.
Okay.
All activities should be accessible to as many people as possible. Just strike the second welcoming,
Okay.
because we have it in the previous sentence. I wouldn't have brought this up at the
Thank
meeting,
you.
but I didn't know we were formally voting on it. And in the last sentence, center relationships and the process of developing trust, I would cut over quick superficial wins, because we don't need to tell people what not to do in a value statement. We need to say positive statement. Okay.
Great.
Now I'm ready to vote.
You like
Sorry.
those, you like those, any comment on any of that? You guys are okay with that editorial change? Anybody else? Let's take a few minutes to actually look at it, because I think it is important, because this will be our public statement of what our vision is. What was the second change?
I suggested cutting over quick superficial wins in the final sentence because it was the only negative statement in the value statement.
That jumped out to me too. Where was the double welcoming?
We have
Two welcomings.
Yeah, we ask organizations to work to align their initiatives with inclusive themes and values to make welcome as many people from across Connecticut's communities as possible. And I kept that, but I suggested that we cut 2 sentences later. All activities should be accessible and welcoming to as many people as possible, and just say accessible to as many people as possible.
Sorry, I was just looking for the other
Yep.
welcome. Thank you.
Very minor, but.
And just for the record, the development of this document was extensive. I mean, we went through meetings, we had a special meeting around IDEA, diversity and inclusion, and this document is really the result of a lot of thinking on our part, and I think we've done some real deep thinking about what we are trying to accomplish and what the purpose of this commission is. And I do believe this will be something that we can, I would envision having meetings around the state about these values and these themes that we're trying to tell new stories and what we're trying to do, because I think there is a lot of interest in this work right now in the state. And I think I would love to have this as a statewide discussion about our history and about how we're going to tell these stories and shape this commemoration. I like to say it's more than a parade. You know, it is not just going to be about battlefields. It's going to be about ideas as much as anything else. And so, you know, it's an important document, I guess, to say.
I have one more question. It just goes back to the mission, and we have celebrating is the first word there, and then later we sort of, you know, talk about inclusive celebration, commemoration, and observance. Is celebrating the first thing that we want to say, or is it more commemorating? I guess.
How about recognizing?
Recognizing.
Yes, I agree, Emrys. I think that's a good point in terms of emphasis.
No, commemorating was better. You were right.
Commemorating?
You were right.
Okay.
Commemorating, yeah, I think, yeah. Commemorating, we like commemorating first? Yes, I agree with that.
Because it includes celebration
you were right.
and
Yes,
other
right,
things.
exactly.
Yeah.
You were absolutely right.
And we are doing more than just celebrating. We're analyzing, really. We're you know.
Yeah, and that comes across in the value statement. So I guess I
Right, okay,
was a little uncomfortable with celebration being the
okay,
main.
great.
Everything else looks good to me.
Anybody else? Okay. I think we will take a vote. Do I have a motion to consider this statement?
So moved.
All right, second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion before we vote to approve this document? I think we're talked out. Okay. All those in favor of approving this commission information statement for the summer of 2023, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Okay, it carries, and this will now become a public document that we will use in our outreach and other efforts that we are going to embark on in the next year or so. Great, thank you. And I would like to do the same for the event approvals criteria. Cindy, you want to discuss that a little bit? This is something that we will use in terms of, well, as it says, approving people and groups that come to us and want our approval of their event, or perhaps, you know, have us help them with funding or whatever their ask is, we felt we needed some criteria. So this is the document that talks about the criteria we will use. And again, it will focus on the themes. So that anybody who comes to us and says we'd like to do something around this 250th, we will have a way of evaluating whether we want to either approve it or be involved with it in any way, shape, or form. So that's the purpose of this document. And I don't know if we want to take a minute and just make sure that it says exactly what we want it to say. I don't know if you can put it up on the screen for the public, or if we need to do that. I don't know.
I'll just make one quick note. If we changed celebrating to commemorating in the previous one, then we should do it also in the first sentence of this document.
Right. All right.
That is, I already have that.
Okay, great.
And what I will say is that the list is pulled directly from the themes and from the governor's executive order, and you'll see enumerated where each of those things is referenced. That first portion is just the mission, and then I think the main area to consider is those last couple of paragraphs. That's where we try to tie in the value statement, the need for accessible programming. Right. And I know John and Merle have been working on kind of a rubric and a little bit of a handbook handbook is too strong of a word, but that they'll share later, best practices. But so encouraging people to ensure that they're aligning with as many of those things as possible. I know we will not be able to police that necessarily, but by people submitting their events, we're asking them to take that into consideration, and hopefully we as a commission will be able to participate in some of those events and be there to give feedback as needed.
Is the thinking that it'll be like an officially sanctioned Connecticut 250 event? With
That's
our
a
logo?
Great question, and it's up to everybody what we think about that. I think at the very least, to be listed on our website and in a calendar that we're making public, we want to make sure that there's at least some relevance to the work that we're doing. And part of that is parades, celebrating. I don't think we're trying to exclude that, but we want to have different sanctioned events versus events that we're promoting. And I don't know if that's the case.
No, Rob, we really haven't quite decided if we're going to go that far with anything. We have already had requests coming in. There's one group that wants to do a teacher conference, for example, a year from now. So we'll have to decide if we're going to go so far as to put our stamp of approval on it or whatever. Mostly, I think people will come and ask us to help them with fundraising, among other things. So this was just to get something down that would give us some guidance on whether how far we want to go or get involved. We've also had a request to develop curriculum around, there's a group that's been developing these state curricula. I forget the name of it. I showed it to you.
Chronicles.
Yeah, the Chronicles, right. So it's for things like that, and we'll probably have to decide on an individual basis how deeply we want to go with any of that. So, yes.
I do notice it says that a subcommittee of this group would review these proposals. So I guess the question still to be asked is, what will they actually be doing? Will they be giving a formal approval? That's a discussion, I guess, still to take place.
Yeah, we'll have to sort that out. My vision of it would be that the subcommittee would review, for example, the teacher conference, which I think you're doing now, and then, maybe bring it to the full commission and decide what level of participation we'd like to, what role we'd like to play.
And Merle made a good point. She said, can we, for the second bullet point, say honor the power of place in Connecticut rather than celebrate?
Yeah.
Which I think is a great.
Yeah, that's good.
I said it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, you had your hand up first.
I would suggest in the penultimate paragraph, the commission may accept, reject, or reconsider an endorsement request, so that an event may change after they submitted something, we may rethink it. And then, I don't know, are we getting into the bullet points, or are these pulled from other documents that the language is set?
They're pulled from other documents.
Well, I guess we just changed to honor the power of. I was going to suggest, and you'll know how significant or not. In the first one, tell inclusive stories, focusing on previously untold stories seems like it's at the expense of maybe, and I wonder if we want to say something like including previously untold stories, because I don't think we want to, if we want, we wouldn't. The signing of the Declaration of Independence, for example, is not a previously untold story, and we wouldn't promote something at the expense of that. So featuring or including or something like that. And the other thing is glory and its missteps and its flaws. I wonder if there's 2 words we could use instead of 3, and I will suggest, not that I love triumphs and tragedies, but if anybody has, that kind of jumped out at me as not ideal for various reasons.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe we should use one or the other of those 2.
Yes, yeah, I think that as a start we should do.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, or simply cut that last clause. That continue the nation's reckoning with the past. Maybe that's
enough.
Yeah, maybe just leave that section out. Yep. Yeah.
So my suggested change here is tell inclusive stories that represent all the people of Connecticut, past and present, including previously untold stories and those that continue the nation's reckoning with the past.
We want like
With its
highlighting
past.
or a word that like isn't so close to inclusive.
Yes, we do. You're right. Tell inclusive stories.
This is our real-time editing team.
See, the problem is we're drawing this from the executive order.
Yes,
so
exactly.
we're changing the word.
Well, that's why I asked if we can change
This
it.
one is the
We
theme,
can.
I think. This is mostly, I think this one was inspired by ASLH.
Oh.
So I think we are welcome to change that.
Highlighting or foregrounding or because that doesn't exclude, but or especially.
I would suggest just leaving that
that's fine.
clause out. I mean, you continue the nation's reckoning with its past. I think
No, I'm
that's-
talking about the focusing on or
Which part?
The second one.
awareness.
Focusing
on previously untold
Oh, local stories and community.
And to me, this is.
Can I say something?
Please.
Hi. Hi, everybody. I'm sorry I'm not able to be with you all. I'm wondering about tell inclusive stories that represent all the people of Connecticut, past and present, focusing on, a broad range of stories, including untold, that reckons with the nation's past in its totality. And so while I don't think glory and missteps and flaws captures things, I do think the possibility of naming it in its totality could capture a range of possibilities, because I think not everyone is saying flaws feels inaccurate, right? Or missteps for genocide, let's say, right? It feels a little underplayed. So if we don't want to try to name all the things, I think, telling the story in its totality might capture what we're trying to do.
Okay, that's well taken.
What about, I'm aware, I don't want to speak for librarians when we have some here. Sometimes we have like untold stories, and then archivists and librarians or communities that have held onto those stories for a long time say, we've been telling, this is not an undiscovered document, this is not an untold story. So I think getting shorter and shorter is good here. Tell inclusive stories that represent all the people of Connecticut, past and present, focusing on those that continue the nation's reckoning with the totality of its past. something like that.
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah. You got that, Cindy?
I'm not sure that that's it. I think I got
Well, write it down.
Merle's back half there,
Let's
and I
start
tried to take the.
She likes it. All right.
Throw it in the chat so I have it for later. No, I think that's great.
Okay. Any other comments? It sounds like to me we're going to have to go back and do a little rewrite before we actually vote this in, or I don't know. Yes.
On a different section, going back to where Andy was earlier, in the second to last paragraph where we talk about an endorsement, I think we still have that question open of, are we actually endorsing programs? So we maybe want to use another word until we make that determination. Because I could see it becoming a competition or a point of pain if we are endorsing some programs and not endorsing others.
Yes, that is the danger with endorsements, yes. Yes, Steve?
I do see there may be a wisdom, though, of having a list of events that may have passed through this process.
Maybe it's just listed, like,
Correct.
I think I'm aware of workload, and I think that the less work that we have to do approving things and putting, imprimatur on it, like, the point of the guidelines is to make that triage easy, and the baseline seems to be just having the events listed on our website. So it seems fair to me to, if we feel we have the capacity further on to do other things, but listed on the website seems like
I think having a basis saying it meets these criteria and that's where we stop. I think even that alone will be helpful.
I think that's a point well taken. I would agree with you. We've talked a little bit about this internally, and it does get very complicated when you start endorsing things specifically, especially because we have very little capacity to follow up on, find out what the event's actually all about. I mean, that's a lot of infrastructure that we don't have yet. Maybe at some point, as you say, Amherst, we'll be able to do those things. But right now, we have no funding, so that's a problem. Yeah, Steve.
And I'd hate to be the person, hey, we got your application, but we can't approve it, here's why, and then, well, what do we have to do to improve? I don't know that we would want to get into that level of discussion.
And I'm also conscious of what you plan and what actually is executed are very different. At what point do we have to check back? And,
So events shared by the commission should be in line with the commission's values statement, must be accessible in compliance with ADA or beyond, equitable, inclusive, and support a broad diversity of voices and perspectives. Events should be nonpartisan in nature and may be reviewed for accuracy of historical interpretation. The commission may accept, reject, or reconsider a listing request in its sole discretion. So it's really just about sharing these events. I think if the event is inconsistent with Merle just asked, what if the event is inconsistent with the commission values? And I think in that case, we don't list it. And
So I think, I just wanted to go back to something that you said earlier with respect to accessibility, Cindy. You said that it's something that we would not be able to police. And just to back up from that for a moment, is there a streamlined way that people are submitting events to you? Because I'm wondering if there is, that's great. If there isn't necessarily, maybe we put together a Microsoft form, and one of the things that we may ask there is it accessible? Please explain what you're doing to provide, accommodations for, et cetera, because if they're not doing it for whatever reason, then we would say, no, we can't endorse this particular event. The struggle that we're going to have with that, being a colonial state, is there's probably going to be a number of events that are going to be at historical sites that they're 200 years old. They're not accessible, but they are a historical site as per the state. That's going to be a struggle that I think we are going to have to navigate throughout our entire time together. So I feel like it was important to raise that now in terms of our process and in terms of the events that we would consider endorsing, because from my personal standpoint, if it isn't accessible, I wouldn't want to put our CT 250 name on it.
but would we want to list it in an events calendar?
Right, and now you're in that
That's
sort of
another
gray
calendar.
area, right, exactly, exactly.
Maybe you put a note, this is not accessible.
We might
Hi
have to,
again.
we might have to, but then you open the door to like, well, why isn't it, and what's going on, and, you know, it's a very tough area to be navigating in for this.
Yeah. Yes.
Hi again. I just wanted to back up my co-chair there on just the importance of being very clear. And I'm wondering if we know that we're going to encounter at least ADA compliance issues at historical sites, if there is a way to have people indicate that as a part of their listing, even if they're not able to provide accessibility, and you know, accessibility is going to be a range of things, right? It could be language, right? Or ASL interpretation to actual physical access to a space. So I think we also may want to think about what are the levels of accessibility that we're talking about, and trying to mitigate where we can what we already know might be challenging from an ADA perspective, like Jonathan just just raised. So I'm putting that out on the table to wonder with you all about that question. If there's something structurally or fundamentally happening there, like what is our obligation to push, beyond?
Would it be possible to, just in this, which I think, Jonathan, was your suggestion here, but when the form they submit, there should just be a series of checkboxes that your committee determines ADA accessible, free on public transportation, ASL, like we make a list, and then it can show up, and you can at least know before you go what you're getting into, and maybe it could be green or red boxes or something. So it's just all in the calendar information.
I think being very upfront with that information and saying, this is why we're asking these questions so that people have it, I think would be helpful. Asking the question, but then specifically saying why we have asked it and why we're providing it.
Mm-hmm. And I think if people see that kind of information on the form, they're saying, okay, well, now we know what kind of information the commission's looking for in terms of events that they would endorse or participate in or advertise, etc.
I would even go farther than that, and maybe even have a statement when you're asking these questions saying fundamental to our work is the accessibility of all people to historic sites and activities. We consider that, a real bottom line.
Paramount, yeah. Yep.
So, that's honestly why we're doing all of this, is to make it accessible for everyone.
And I would just say that from the perspective of like small, like under-resourced local history organizations, the ADA accessibility is a huge hurdle for them. And there aren't a lot of sources of funds for them to become compliant, even when they want, helping to, the tourism side of it, but also to, help preserve and make accessible the cultural and historic resources we're trying to highlight. So.
And not to take this conversation too far down a rabbit hole here, but I wonder if those are the kind of questions. The ADA is a federal law.
Yeah.
Right? And we all know the federal government's great at saying, go do this, but we're not giving you any money to do it. Is there a way to raise these kind of questions to the folks that you talk to at the national level, the national commissions and organizations, and say, look, this is critical to not just Connecticut's work, but this is a national issue. Critical to not just Connecticut's work, but this is a national issue. And we want to raise these questions. The organization, we'll give you $10,000. Okay, to do what? Right. Okay, because for some states, this is a critical issue that's going to take far more than 10 grand to maybe even solve one facility's location. So just to have those kind of, not that they're going to open okay, here you go, but let's have those kind of conversations at the national level to get everyone's collaboration on how can we do these? How can we address these issues to that very point?
Yeah, Merle has a question.
Merle?
Sorry, I was trying to type. I'm not a fast typer. My question was to the degree to which we could actually, building on Emeris's idea here, tie this to the kind of advocacy that's needed and maybe the allocation of resources that are connected to tourism, right? So if part of the goal of doing this commemoration period is to bring more tourism to the state of Connecticut, how can we, tie this to the infrastructure that is needed to support tourism and the expansion of tourism in Connecticut? So really hitching those wagons together, I guess, sort of making, quote unquote, air quotes, a business case for doing the right thing.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Merle. And where I'm thinking is that this is a conversation we need to have with DECD, potentially for a bond request that could go along with this whole effort. I would certainly be willing to make the case, but I think let's have a conversation with DECD about that, because I think it's a great offshoot for the work we're doing. I mean, it would be a tremendous accomplishment, especially in enhancing those historic sites. I mean, it would be a real contribution.
And Jason just said that CT Humanities can survey and report info on ADA compliance for our 730 plus grantees. So, go ahead.
I was just going to add that New Jersey state legislature has allocated $25 million for upgrades of physical facilities at state-owned historic sites. I think that's significant to know.
Yep.
The other thing that has been talked about with ASLH and others is that the bicentennial in 1976, around that time, 30 to 40% of the museums that exist today were founded. Mm-hmm. And so there have been conversations about what will the 250th do. And in some ways, I've been thinking about it in terms of the cultural tourism. And if an impediment to cultural tourism is access to some of these sites, that could be a legacy of America 250 to make these sites more accessible as part of an overall strategy with tourism. And I guess the last point I'll make is that as this conversation is unfolding, I keep thinking about our desire to connect with the Department of Tourism and have the Department of Tourism embrace America 250, Connecticut 250. And I just think we have to give some thought to what will they be publicizing and what will be the criteria for them to promote particular events and activities around the state. So I think I come back to some of the earlier conversation that I think that we have to give some thought to some sort of vetting that might go beyond, the form that was talked about. But I think that's a start in the right direction, but there might have to be some more consideration to that.
Yeah, agreed. Interesting. All right, I'm going to slot that under my new business idea, and I would suggest that we might have some meetings with DECD to explore some of this, because you're right, it could be a real legacy, and it's something that is, I think, doable. I mean, in the same.
Having this same idea just as you were talking, so out of my head.
Okay, great. Yes.
Just two points. I think ultimately having some way to either invite municipalities to contribute their potential opportunities or have it somewhere posted where people can do it. I'll give an example of East Haddam. There's two things that come to my mind in this discussion. One is they have an annual event in October, the Mood is Thunder in the Valley, with the drum and fife, ancient muster, and drum and fife groups from all over New England, all over Connecticut come. It's been happening for a very long time, 100, 200 years. And it's a parade to an extent, and you see folks in the different companies, and it's really neat. That's happening in October. That might be a nice event to be able to market. So there could be existing things like that. And then I also think about, we were talking about Nathan Hale, on the logo for East Haddam is the Nathan Hale Schoolhouse where he taught, that overlooks the Connecticut River. It's great. I'm not sure how ADA compliant it is. It's from the 1700s, but it's there, and it's noteworthy. It's ingrained in the fabric of the town. It's on the logo, and that might be something that local municipality might want to highlight for folks who, if there's a map and like, these are all the different historical things that you could do. And so that's one thing I wanted to mention. And then, when we talk about earlier, the conversation about glory, missteps, flaws, and telling inclusive stories, in preparation for this, I actually went back to the National Foundation of the Arts and Humanities Act of 1965, which funded Connecticut Humanities and founded it. And there's a number, I think it's like at least 12 declarations, principles, and findings of Congress. And, one of them talks about, and I think it's relevant to this discussion, the world leadership that has come to the United States cannot rest solely on superior power, wealth, and technology, but must be solidly founded on worldwide respect and admiration for the nation's high qualities as a leader in the realm of ideas and of the spirit. And if we're going to be celebrating 250 years of America, Congress explicitly found that. That's their findings. I want to make sure that we talk about ideals and the spirit, so we have good, wide participation in the whole entire state, which I think will really have a lot of contributions for this entire commemoration.
Absolutely, thank you, Michael. Yeah, I hope we have captured that in these documents. The idea, it's about ideas and ideals, as I say, not just parades. But anyway, thank you. Yeah.
So I think this has all been really great feedback. We're looking at 11:37 right now, so I'm gonna say that we have 4 minutes for each subcommittee report, and I'm sorry to cut some folks short. In terms of this document, it sounds like I'll make some edits and pass it around after that.
Great. Great. And we can defer actually acting on it. We can do it by email or whatever, where people can weigh in and say, yeah, this looks good to me, and we'll get it all approved, and then we'll do it that way. If that's okay.
That sounds great. And I think it sounds like at this point we're just looking at a listing, and we'll tackle the idea of official endorsement in the future, but this will just be a way to listing it on our website.
Okay, we're good. All right, that sounds like a good plan. So we'll move on to subcommittee reports, because I want to make sure, I know some subcommittees have met, some are still out there. So let's start with community and organizational engagement. Yep.
Hi, everyone. Amherst Williams. I can be pretty brief. Our subcommittee met at the end of June and, focused primarily on our action plan. We did some work in the meeting to think about, the main activities that we want to be engaged in. And some folks stayed on to just do some quick editing. So I'll just quickly share the main goals and action steps that we have in our action plan thus far, and then hand things over to the next subcommittee. So the first goal is to promote an expansive and inclusive sense of Connecticut 250. A couple of these action steps have already been completed, and that was the listening sessions that Connecticut Humanities already held, and the IDAA workshop that we participated in. Further action steps in this realm are to meet with legislators, municipal leaders, and funding organizations to share the work of the Commission, to encourage events and activities that are consistent with the Commission's guiding values. Some ideas here were to work directly with legislative caucuses to host info sessions or listening sessions, potentially at a diverse set of sites around the state to help, again, thinking about the power of place here. Developing a presentation for Council of Government groups, other municipal groups, and take such a presentation on the road as needed to raise awareness. and also continue to field inquiries and input from community members about their goals and ambitions for Connecticut 250. We see this as an ongoing role of the subcommittee, and having the mechanisms that even already exist on the website for contacting members of the commission, and in particular developing a workflow that can keep us responsive to those inquiries. The second goal here is to really create a community-based structure that will be used for commission work moving forward. And the action steps we identified here are to identify and utilize existing trusted networks to do broad outreach across the state in order to involve and engage the widest possible audience. I talked about a number of ways in which we can do this. The second action step, to encourage wide collaboration and inclusion across Connecticut with participation from elected officials, community leaders, libraries, schools, community centers, local museums, historic sites, and other interested groups. Again, sort of an ongoing work, but really thinking about activating existing networks that are there, and leaning on those actually, and not necessarily limiting it to, sort of identifying one person in every town, but really trying to get it out to the widest possible list to encourage diverse participation. A draft of the action plans in the commission folder, so if any of the commissioners want to take a look at how it's shaping up, feel free to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Amherst? Okay. Education, Steve.
And we had was 2 weeks ago now, we had a week and a half maybe, we had a very lively and well-attended subcommittee meeting. And I think, and this, by the way, it was teachers, it was university folks, it was public history folks. And I think what we're still wrestling with a bit is this education in a K-12 context, or is this education in a larger context? And we had a conversation with Denise that helped to clarify that. I think K-12 is important, but our group would, I think, fairly strongly state that education is a larger thing than just K-12 education. So those are some issues that we're still wrestling with. Another thing is, would we be the that was discussed, should we be the creators of educational materials? Should we be the coordinator of the educational materials? Or should we be the people that allow educational materials that others might be creating to be disseminated? So I think our big issue that we're still sort of wrestling with is, what is the scope of an education subcommittee? I mean, I would say this in fairness, I think if it was decided that all we're doing is K-12 education, period, I could tell you that would be perhaps disappointing, might be the word to some members of our subcommittee. So I guess we're still sort of working these things out. And Sally or Deb, if you have anything else from the meeting that you'd want to say.
I don't think so. We talked about kind of throwing this out to the group, but I think it is, I think in some ways I'm the one that started the question, because having worked for many years with K-12 education with Steve, probably 30 years now, I know how much is involved just with that. And of course, right now, history education is in the crosshairs, and it will be quite a task by itself. So, but there's also a gap, I think, between, we were trying to wrestle with how do we reach the wider audience. And I know there are several members of the commission, particularly Stephanie Thomas, very interested in civic education for adults and more broadly. And of course, the whole university and college sector it's just a different system entirely, if it can even be considered a system. However, you have some very knowledgeable and experienced people on that subcommittee with, Richard Hirsch is former president of Trinity College and does teacher education for college and K-12. So, I'm willing to consider, but it is a big chunk of work. And that's the question really, is if you think the subcommittee can handle that much, or should we break it off into it. I really don't know the answer to my own question.
So respectfully, I mean, Amherst has this wonderful action plan. I think until we can answer some of these questions, and I think we would do that. We're having another subcommittee meeting at the end of the month. I think we'd have to sort of, or as a subgroup with you and Jason's guidance, sort of make that determination of what the scope of our committee should be.
Yeah, my thinking is give it a shot. I mean, if you can come up with an action plan that you think this committee would be able to carry off, I mean, keep it within boundaries. You know, when you start talking about creating curriculum, as you and I know, that's a monumental task, especially in Connecticut, where every school system does its own thing. And traditionally, we've built on things, you know, and patched it together and come up with something that matches the framework. And what's the status of the framework in social studies?
Actually, there'll be new standards that'll hopefully be approved at the September board meeting, which would State Board of Ed meeting, which would provide some great guidance on this.
Right. So yeah, that will define a lot, I think, as to what we're able to do around that framework. But I mean, this is my suggestion: is see what they can come up with. If they have ideas on how to make that happen and make it be seamlessly education for all, let's have a look. And you know, if they want to take it on, I don't know.
I think even if we start looking at content and how to teach this information to students, that's the kind of thing that eventually filters up to their parents. So you reach them in that way. But also, I think the things that the students will need to know are also the things that the parents and other adults will need to know. So I think that once we start looking at everything, it will become natural that we'll want to share this thing, whatever we do, with a broader audience. So I think if we kind of approach it in that way, that what we do well for students can also be shared with historical societies and libraries and anybody else who's trying to push that information out to adults.
Yeah, I was very impressed with the conversation.
Just offer a quick thought.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason. Yeah.
Thanks. I just want to offer a quick thought, and Rob, I apologize if I preempt any of your comments, but just thinking about the way that we engage the public in an educational framework. We have, you know, I don't want to lose sight of a public signage campaign that we've been thinking about in our public spaces, and the work that we can accomplish there when we build the public's awareness at these different locations, and how that might dovetail with curricular initiatives. But, you know, sort of a broad public outreach and education initiative that's sort of centralized through the work of both the Commission and or Connecticut Humanities. Those are the kinds of conversations that we're beginning to have and hope to develop further with the Office of Tourism.
Okay, does that give you guys enough guidance to go forward? Okay, great. All right, governance.
Yeah, I'm going to take that one on very briefly. Both Stephen and Ariane are unable to attend. We had a meeting a few weeks ago. Just very quickly thinking about the bylaws and how we might model them. We looked at both Rhode Island and Vermont and their commission bylaws. Rhode Island was one that had a pretty robust structure. Vermont had one that used very accessible language, and we thought that those might be particularly useful in the work that we do as we structure this. Partly, we wanted to look at this as an exercise and an opportunity of how to model how we dialogue and discourse with one another. And just sort of reviewing our notes, you know, one in which conversations are structured around collaboration, the benefits of collaboration, learning, and democracy, but also reimagining and reifying a social contract. So if we can embed that within the framework of our bylaws, I think it's a great opportunity to demonstrate to the public how we can sort of uphold the ideals that we espouse here. We also, mindful that, the bylaws set forth a series of relationships and defining what that looks like. We want to make sure that we're attentive to inclusion, diversity, equity, and access in our work. And as well as we've proposed a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Economic and Community Development, and want to make sure that that relationship is codified within the bylaws as well. Beyond that, we also talked briefly about the current structure of the commission, just making sure that it's open and transparent to all of us and to the public, both the nature of the commission as a whole, the subcommittees with the working groups, but also the advisory council that we will be composed of groups of scholars that will inform the work of the commission and meet relatively infrequently, once to twice a year. But alongside that, sort of in a parallel sense, Connecticut Humanities has just created a 250th Leadership Ad Hoc Committee that will be responsible for fundraising from corporate and private sources. So that is more attached to Connecticut Humanities' role, but also protects the privacy of donors there. So you can look through the minutes to see a little bit more detail on that. And then just finally, Stephen made a proposal to invite the Chief Executive Officer, David Adams, of the Urban Assembly to our fall 2023 meeting. In the Urban Assembly, this is an organization that is a school support agency that develops learning tools and programs that enhance student growth and school performance, that really focus on advancing students' social and economic mobility by improving public education. And David is a wonderful public speaker, and I think this is a great opportunity to sort of embody the work that we're doing in public spaces and how we can think about education initiatives in Connecticut through this. So that is what we're proposing. I would encourage you all to look him up online. And that is, in a nutshell, governance.
Could you, Jason, can you mention his name again and how we could look him up?
David Adams, the Urban Assembly.
Urban Assembly.
And Cindy, if you're able to maybe drop a link in the chat, or we can forward that.
You can forward it. No one but you and Merle can see the chat.
Okay. So I've been shooting thoughts into the universe.
That's why I've been sharing them.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Now, marketing and tourism. Rob, you.
I will be very brief.
Okay. All right.
The committee hasn't met yet. And, we have had some conversations. Anthony from the Connecticut Tourism, he's agreed to be on the committee. Cindy mentioned Jason and I had a meeting with him to talk a little bit more about this. I've also invited Aaron Markovich from Connecticut Landmarks to be part of the committee. He's agreed to do so. So I think one of the first things we'll do, based on some of the discussion earlier, is to connect with colleagues in New York, Vermont, and other New England states to see what they're doing and how they're interacting with their departments of tourism.
Great. Okay. Thanks. And lastly, inclusion, diversity, equity, access. We've had some discussion. Merle or Jonathan? Any report?
Sure. Jonathan, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
I defer to you, my friend.
Well, very briefly, Jonathan and I have been cooking up a set of tools that we just shared with Cindy for preliminary review for the co-chairs of the commission, which includes a rough draft of a rubric for IDEA assessment tool, as well as an outline for a IDEA toolkit to support groups looking to make sure that their events are more inclusive. In addition, we came up with some language around and framework around the expansion of the IDEA subcommittee as well. So we submitted that on Monday and look forward to some early feedback before having an opportunity to present it to the larger commission. Jonathan, did I miss anything? Rubric assessment?
No, not at all. I think, overall, we looked at what we submitted as very high level at this point, based on the idea of learning more about what work is going to go on within all of the subcommittees. And we also looked at it as a living document that can be altered over time, given the work that's being done. And I think with respect to membership of the subcommittee, one of the things that we were looking at is somebody from each subcommittee that might be the liaison, if you will, to embody this work and sort of come back to Merle and myself for ideas, advice, counsel. And I think, not to put Merle on the spot, but to the degree that she and I could sort of peek in on each subcommittee and their meetings periodically when we're available, to make sure, again, that this work is and this vision is being encapsulated within the work and embodied within the work that all of the subcommittees are doing. I think that was the idea and the intent of how we were envisioning the subcommittee. So again, we just submitted that on Monday. We're not looking for, no. No need to apologize, Cindy. We just submitted that on Monday, and so just to let you know that it's all there, but certainly looking forward to discussing it, if not before the next meeting here, certainly email us with any ideas and feedback that you all have.
Okay, great. All right, any questions? Anybody?
Sound good, Merle?
Sound good? Sounds like a great idea. Okay, without further discussion, we have a couple of minutes for any public comment. Our public is here again today. They're the regulars. Litchfield County, well represented. So unless there's anything from anyone else, I forgot to mention, we are getting publicity already. Jason and I were on WNPR yesterday morning, I think it was, or the day before, and we're getting quite a lot of feedback from that program. So it is percolating out there. People are beginning to realize that this is happening, and we are starting to get requests. So I think we're off and running, and that was a good thing. And I know there are some other things going on too. So keep the information coming to us. Any thoughts you have, any activities that are going on. I think the biggest thing we're going to be able to do is just communicate all this. And that will be a large task in and of itself, believe me. But that is our mission, and I think we've done some great work so far. So I think without further ado, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you very much. See you next. When's our next meeting date?
October 18th.
October 18th. Okay. So we'll see you then, and be working in between times. And it's been great work. Thank you, everyone, for everything you're doing.